Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the 100th episode of the Music Lab podcast. My name is Dogg, and I am so excited to be with you all. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to our YouTube channel, our social media pages. That helps us. That helps the bands and artists and people in the music business like Miss Leanne. Also, check out our sponsor, RAR Outfitters. That's RAWR, outfitters.com. Don't just wear RAR. So, Miss Leanne Merritt, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
It is so nice to have you on. We connected through IG probably at least a year ago, right? Does that sound right?
I think it was right about the time you were headed to South by Southwest. So
Yeah.
probably last March, sometime around then.
Yeah. So you are based in Nashville. How long have you been in Nashville?
Pretty much all my life. I live in the Nashville metropolitan area. I grew up in Hendersonville, which is just north of Nashville, maybe 15 miles, something like that. So all my life, I'm a native from this area, and the only time I've been gone was to go to college. I lived in East Tennessee at that time. I went to UT Knoxville. But yeah, pretty much here forever.
So obviously Nashville is, music, it's just they're synonymous with each other. At what age did you kind of start to feel that magic from Nashville and with regards to music?
It's hard to say what age. I know as probably when I was, in middle school, junior high school age is really when I started getting into music a lot. That's when I started taking music lessons and paying a lot more attention to it. But I was even younger than that when I discovered radio. I had an uncle that bought me my first turntable and gave me records for Christmas one year for a gift. So I got vinyl when I was 6 or 7. I mean, I'm not joking. And that was given to me as a gift, so it was kind of his taste in music. But I think I bought my first record when I was 7 or 8. So I've been hooked ever since.
And do you remember what was that album?
Oh yeah, it was London Calling by The Clash.
Nice.
I heard it in the arcade. I was in there and I think they were playing Rock the Casbah or something. And that was just one of those songs that, it was instantly something that caught my attention. And I'm one of those people that's always listening to the music that's happening in the background. I don't know if you're the same way, but whether I'm watching a movie or a TV show or anything, I'm paying attention to the soundtrack and to the music that they're playing, especially in commercials, things like that. And I'm not a big television watcher, but when I do walk through the room, if I hear a song I recognize, I'm like, oh, they did a good, you know what I mean? It's props to whoever is picking the music for that.
So middle school is when you first kind of got the love for music. High school, then what did we do? Band or chorus or anything like that? Or when
So
did that
yeah,
start? Okay.
I played a trumpet from about the age of 12 until I went to college. I dropped that when I left to go to school. But yeah, I played music. I took lessons, participated, like I said, in some extracurricular activities. I was talking about that a little bit a while ago about taking that maybe to another level beyond, like the band level in school. So that was fun. That was competitive. That was something that allowed me to pick out what I wanted to learn and what songs I wanted to play. And that's as far as it went with that. Maybe someday I'll pick it back up again, but I really miss it. I wish I was still playing. It's one of
When
those
you
things.
hear when you watch like someone like Jennifer Hartswick, play trumpet, like I'm just so amazed like that instrument can do that and make that sound. But
Exactly.
yeah. So, so what were your like close friends or your best friend in high school? What were they listening to?
Mm.
Or
I
were
don't
they
know.
really not into music?
Well, yeah, probably not. But I dated somebody that moved from California, and that is pretty much who I would credit to introducing me to music that not everyone else was listening to. He moved and had been exposed to a lot of alternative bands. And in Nashville at that point in time, this was back in the 80s, those bands didn't come to town and play. We had to go, to Atlanta or somewhere a few hours away to be able to see concerts like that. So I really had not been exposed to being able to see things that were not maybe commercially friendly, and played on the radio at that time. I mean, I discovered, college radio when I was in high school. And that was a big thing for me of where I started to hear different music and things that really caught my attention. But, I was never one of the people that conformed to what everybody else was doing. I'm the total opposite of that. I do what I want to do. And I try, if somebody's doing one thing, I usually am doing the opposite, just intentionally. But it's the same way. I just, I'm curious and always want to explore and find new things. And the person that I was talking about that I dated, we went on to college together, and he worked in a record store. So I had a constant, steady supply of new music always. I mean, he would bring home stacks and this was back in the day when CDs just became popular, stacks of CDs to me. Every time he would work, what either people brought in to trade in or new things. And yeah, it was pretty amazing to have, somebody that would help me find all this great new music way back when. And I think that has continued. I'm always hunting for something new. And just maybe it's my short attention span. I don't know, but I've always wanted to hear something a little different. Or, there are some things that I will never get tired of, but I'm always on the hunt for something. I think it's a daily thing for me too, is seeing what new things I can hear, what I can find, and looking for what's out there.
Do you relate that kind of attitude or philosophy toward any other aspect in your life, or is it just toward music?
Mostly music.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not a huge film buff. I mean, I like watching movies, but I know some people that are obsessive about it, and that's probably how I am about music. Um, that's probably my number one. I think I like to read and I buy a lot of books, but I don't always get around to sitting down with them. I have good intentions though, but yeah, I think music is in the forefront for pretty much everything. And maybe that's because I live in a music city where there's no shortage of something happening, whether it's live music or going somewhere to buy music, or just listening to the radio. That's pretty much what I do. And yeah, it is an obsession.
So let's talk about the city of Nashville, because I visited there in 2019, 18. It has obviously grown. It has changed a lot. You have been there for all of it. What have you seen that's been positive, and what have you seen that's negative?
Hmm. Well, I mean, unfortunately, Nashville has not tried to preserve some of the historic places, and things. They've allowed developers to come in and raise a lot of the older buildings rather than using those. So that's something that, I feel is a shame to take away some of the interesting, things and things that give it character. But on the other hand, we do have now more music venues than we've ever had. I try to avoid going downtown. And if you visited, you kind of understand the difference between, the honky tonks and the places maybe that are what most people associate with Nashville versus the neighborhood music places. And I saw the poster in the corner of your room on the wall, and I was looking at
Yes.
this as soon as we started talking. I'm like, I know the Berlinettas, I know the guys that play in that. And that, yeah, was at the five spot. So that's very cool that you got to go to the five spot because that is a place that I feel like really represents, the local music scene. You can see all kinds of music there, but that is a neighborhood place that it will always be something good. There will always be somebody local playing. And when people come to visit, I try to encourage them to get out away from downtown just so they realize there are some great places to catch shows, away from downtown. And we are very lucky that most of those have made it, over the last 4 or 5 years. Not all of them have. A few of them have been bought and have changed ownership here recently. So that's changed a little bit. I mean, they're still open, but I think the booking is a little different than it might have been prior, to the new owners coming in. I think the vision is a little different when you see who is in control. If it's somebody, that's part of the Nashville music community, you can definitely feel a difference versus someone that maybe is an outside group that is catering maybe more towards the tourist side of things. There have been a few clubs that have changed over the last couple of years, and I can tell that the booking and the artists that they are booking at their venues has changed quite a bit. So it's kind of lost the feel and the vibe that it had before that. Like some of the rock clubs, um, as some of the people here say, they've gone bougie. They're not quite the raw, authentic, type of rock club that they used to be. Now they're all shiny and new and just maybe not the caliber of what you would see before, but it's all good. I mean, I think there's enough in town now to please everybody, which is good.
So I know that this might be an impossible question to answer for you, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What is your favorite venue in Nashville to see a show at? And why?
Currently it is at Third Man Records. It's the Blue Room. Partly because the size, it's still small. It only holds a couple hundred people. Yeah, exactly. It's always good. I adore the person that is in charge of the booking now, and she has just knocked it out of the park the last couple of years. But it has taken some of the venues that closed that were booking some of those bands, and they have absorbed a lot of, the rock and the indie and the outsider artists. And that's where I get to see that kind of music. Unfortunately, the ones that I went to before either closed or have, they shut down and reopened kind of with a new focus and a different concept, which it's okay. It's just not the same.
Is the basement one of those venues you're talking
Oh, yeah.
about?
No, that one hasn't changed. The basement, no. The
Okay.
OG basement and the basement east are still pretty tight with, um, the things that they've always done.
Okay.
So yeah, those are two more that I really, really appreciate and go to quite a bit. So yeah, the basement east, Third Man Records, the Blue Room. There are a few tiny small places scattered here and there. There's one called Dark Matter, which is a little bit on the edge of town, but they've always got great stuff. They are definitely more on the fringe for who they book. Definitely a lot more outsider type of music, but they'll get some major acts every once in a while, that come through.
Yeah. One of the acts that we just happened to see, and usually this always happens at South by, was a band called Poms. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah, yeah.
Poms?
Oh, POMS, no.
Yeah, they're from New York. They started their set in normal clothes, and then before they started the first song, they all in unison tore off their clothes, and they all were in like white onesies. They all like it looked like pajamas, and I didn't understand anything that the guy said. They danced, they broke down their instruments. They were just captivating, like just absolutely captivating. My girlfriend bought a shirt from them, like, and they were
That
the
sounds
sweetest
awesome.
guys. Yeah, the sweetest guys afterwards. But like, we're looking at them with our mouths dropped open, like, what is going on?
That's an experience.
Yes, it definitely was. So let's talk about, so how did you get involved with the radio station then?
A friend of mine told me about it back when they were still doing a GoFundMe campaign. So let me back up a little bit. We are a listener supported nonprofit, community radio station, but the origins were from Vanderbilt's college radio station. And that was the station where I first heard different alternative music, all the things that I discovered when I was in high school. That was the station that I had listened to. And I remember at night I was turning on the radio, late in the evening when I was in high school, probably trying to wind down for the day. And I was picking up some music that I'd never heard before. And a lot of it was local bands. Some of them are still around. But that station, it just so happened that they decided to sell off their FM signal and go online only. And they were a classical station for a while. So they had been a community station, not only a college station, but there were people on that station who were not students. And those are the people that started the station where I am now. WXNA was founded by 7 people who came from that station. And when they lost their radio station, they heard that the FCC was allowing people to apply for low power radio station licenses. And they started that campaign. It took them about 5 years to go through all of the application process, raising the money, applying and doing all the things they needed to do. And we went on the air in June of 2016. So we're about to turn 8 years old next month. And I got on during the GoFundMe campaign. One of my friends, a high school friend, said, "Hey, this is right up your alley." I'd had a little experience with my boyfriend that worked in the record store back in college on a college radio station. I'm going to the studio and doing some stuff with him, but really had not actually been a DJ. I just have always been obsessed with music and I wanted to do it so bad. When I applied, there was an 11-page application that we had to fill out. It's a lot different now, but for that first round, it was pretty daunting to kind of pitch your idea of what you would do and why you would be good at it. We had to record ourselves and do some things, and now here we are. I think the process has changed a bit for what they ask people that apply now. And in the beginning, they didn't know when they were going to go on the air. I got accepted, but I didn't get a show right off the bat. And I probably was one of the few people that waited. That first group of people that they selected, I think it was 11 people. And out of those 11, 2 of us hung on until we got on the air. Everybody else just dropped off. They didn't have the patience to wait because I had to wait until probably I would say the best way to put it is until they got maybe in a position where someone could have another person come in and kind of show them the ropes. And I was very lucky that the president of the station and the person, that was really in charge of things, sent me a letter and asked me if I wanted to come in and train on her show, which was a big honor. I think I'm the only person that she ever trained. And that was pretty incredible. I learned a lot. She had worked in commercial radio at other stations in Nashville and in LA, and had a lot of good points to make about doing interviews and, a lot of things that maybe not everybody has touched upon. Maybe they have. I'm not quite sure what their training was like, but it's a group of volunteers, and as the roles have shifted around at the station, different people have come in and come out. I'm sure the process has changed a little bit since the pandemic. Now we are able to kind of help train and do some things to bring new people in, just because they didn't have an actual place where everybody could get together. In the past, they had a class where they would meet in the evenings and sit down and answer questions. Now it's maybe one-on-one with like a DJ and bringing somebody into the studio. So there are a few people that I think have applied that I may end up training here soon if we can get our schedules coordinated. But, it's a volunteer thing, and it's definitely been something that has grown and evolved. There's over 80 DJs now on the station. And I don't know how many people have been there since day one, but I'd say maybe 20 or 30, if that many. But, it's interesting. I'm sure they've got a list and an archive of all the people that have had shows that may not be on the station currently. But it's been something really cool. I've been on the same day since I began, almost in the exact same time slot, which is pretty unusual. But it's one that's harder to fill, I think, because I'm in an afternoon spot, so I've hung on to it.
So then do you have then a full-time, then what do you do for your full-time work then?
I don't. That's probably why I take this so seriously. Right now, I'm not working anywhere. Kind of retired from what I was doing in the past. And, I volunteer and do some things around town. Do some other things, teaching some DJ classes, which is a lot of fun. My friend and I do a ladies only DJ class. We've been doing that since 2001 or 2021. And that's been a lot of fun, helping get more females on the decks. And it's a vinyl class. So we teach how to spin vinyl. Not like it's hard, but it gives people hands-on practice to do it. And, I've got some chronic health problems. So that's been part of the reason that I haven't been working like I had in the past. And I've been in the medical field before this. So don't miss that too much.
What's the age group for the women that do this DJ class?
We take all ages. We don't have a limit on, most of them, the younger ones that come in, maybe teenagers. We've had some high school students come in, but because it's at a place called Vinyl Tap. I don't know if you got to check that out, but it's a record store and a bar. So when we do that class, after 7 p.m., you have to be 21 and up. So that kind of eliminates some of the younger people, but we don't discourage anyone from participating.
They could do it in the summertime when school's out, right?
True, yeah. And it's just the hours that we offer that class. Sometimes we do it on a weekend and it's in the afternoon, so that really isn't an issue. But when we do it during the week and it's in the evenings, then because it's a bar, they have to limit the ages coming in after a certain time.
So how do you feel like the radio station, outside of promoting shows, how do you feel like they best help out like the local venues?
Well, technically we play whatever we want to play, but we do have a music librarian and somebody that works with programming. And, when we get tons of music submissions, we also started a concert calendar a couple of years ago. So now with that calendar, we're trying to help get the word out about shows. I think it's a very good symbiotic type of relationship. We have several people on our station that are musicians that are in the music industry, some record label owners, just different people. So, we're all kind of working in that way in one way or the other, whether it's just helping get the word out, or interviewing. When people want to promote something, they will approach all of the DJs to see if anybody's interested. Since it is a volunteer thing, we don't have to do it, but quite a few of us try to help and do enough, to help promote local shows. And I do both. I get local artists and I get touring artists. Sometimes it's international. It just depends. And it has gotten to the point now where I'm having people approach me. I'm getting things from venues and places, that are sending info, like City Winery and places that are sending out emails of, hey, we've got shows coming up. Would you be interested? And they're reaching out since word's gotten out that we can do some of that too.
So are you aware that the local promoters do they have to kind of jump through hoops sometimes with Live Nation having a presence in town?
I don't know about that as much. I honestly don't. I know they have partnered with some of the venues, and actually, from what I've been told, at least from the venue owner, that has helped them, not hurt them. So I think they've seen it as a positive thing, but I'm not quite sure about the other venues. Honestly, I think now, because after having no shows and no touring artists, for most of 2020, it has gotten to the point now where it's unreal to see the amount of touring bands and bands coming through. And I was just talking to one of the co-owners of the Basement and the Basement East yesterday about how tough it is now to try to see all the shows in one night, because in the past you wouldn't have two or three shows happening all on the same evening that you wanted to go to. And for the last year or two, that has been the case. It's been nonstop. So it's getting hard to see everything you want to see because sometimes they're on the same night and then you have to make tough choices. But I mean, we both were reminiscing yesterday about back in the day when people wouldn't come to Nashville. And now it's the opposite. It is, a good place, I guess. They know the tourism and the numbers will support most everybody here, unless it's, there have been a few shows that I've been to, which I feel might have been booked at the wrong venue. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, when that's sometimes a bad thing. Of course, you really don't know until the time comes, and they don't know that either. I don't know the process as well, when a band may be booking their own shows and not really be familiar with the area. I've talked to a few people and tried to help them, when they've asked. I've suggested like the 5 Spot and smaller clubs like you've mentioned. And sometimes they don't listen and they end up going somewhere that may not have been the best choice, but they don't know that until they get here and maybe see for themselves or something. But I mean, I just don't know how bands can even afford to tour anymore because it's gotten so outrageous. I mean, I've talked to a lot of them about when they come to town, most everybody looks for a place to stay because it's so expensive, to stay in an Airbnb or a hotel or something. And most of them have told me that they leave Nashville before they try to spend the night. They will go an hour or two away from Nashville so they can find somewhere that's affordable. And, that's a shame that they have to, hit the road, but it's just impossible. Nashville hotel prices have, it's crazy to see how much they have gone up. I think we talked about that recently, that it's just insane to see. For a while, they were higher than New York. I think they've caught up to each other now, but it's just doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's not feasible for most bands to afford to be able to do that. In fact, a lot of the artists have said they're not even making enough money to break even on their tours these days, which is a shame.
It's heartbreaking.
Mhm.
It really is, because like the one thing that you don't want a band who has any sort of talent or any sort of upside, the reason for them to quit is finances. Like that, like it's just
Yeah, it
like
is
we
heartbreaking.
should be better than that, like as a society. And I'm not going to go down the political ride, but like what I'm saying. Like it's just it's so sad to me, because you're right. I mean, I talk to these bands all of the time, and like it is the touring struggle is real. Like it is absolutely real. The cost involved,
Mhm.
and like you know you and I growing up, we were used to a band going into the studio, they put out an album, and then they tour behind it. Now you have to tour to be able to record a song, let alone just a whole album. It's just yeah, just completely reversed.
I know
Um,
other countries, some of them have grants. I know I've talked to quite a few people from the UK, and it's really sad that the United States doesn't value or view the artists like they do in other countries, where they try to help them make a living wage by either supplementing or offering grants. There's quite a few of those that I've people that I've talked to that have gotten grants that have allowed them to come over to the United States and either get studio time or come over here and tour, especially around like South by Southwest. That's a big
Australia
one.
is huge
Mhm.
for that. Yep,
Yeah.
Australia definitely. Um, Also, the in France, the Silverlines, a band that I interviewed, they said when they tour France, they are so impressed that the promoters go above and beyond like they'll go on the radio stations to promote the shows. And they said in England, that's non-existent. Like that doesn't happen. So it's a big difference between England and France, just in relation to like, and they said like the French are very like as if they hear it's an English band that's in town, they're gonna go just because it's that. Like they're not like as picky. They're not as like they just want to enjoy themselves. They want to have a good time. And they felt like that was a real welcoming kind of feeling, that you don't always get in, I guess, different countries. But
That
you're right.
sounds weird.
In Huntsville, Alabama, apparently, they give bands and artists that are from Huntsville, I think he said like 25 up to $2,500 a quarter, as long as you're touring and you're it's a ticketed event. But like that's awesome. Like more, and then
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
helps like the artists in these towns to build kind of a music culture. So it's there. It's just, it just needs that ball to start rolling. So
Yeah, I wish they would continue on with that. I have found a couple things online recently. There's a group called I think it was called the Fan Alliance, where they are talking about um, maybe the secondary ticket market and some of the racket that's going on with ticket fees and ticket prices and those kind of things. And they have not, I think, approached maybe helping just artists with the cost of touring, but they are looking at all the aspects of the live music industry right now a little bit more closely. And, there's a couple different groups that are trying to get things kind of going to help maybe change some of the inequities that are out there with some of the ticketing groups. And you probably know what I'm talking about, just because it's just not set up, to be something that is either helping the artists or the fans or the people that want to see it. There's definitely, it's super inflated these days with what the costs are, the fees, the whole thing. And I noticed when I went to see shows in France and in England, they didn't have all that. I couldn't believe the cost of a ticket to see the same band. I saw My Morning Jacket last year in London versus what it would cost here to see them at a similar size venue. So, you can kind of see the differences, and who knows, who's the person making all the profits off of that, but it's definitely not trickling down. And, when you hear that a venue is taking a cut of merch, that really bothers me too, because that's just not right. I mean, to afford, and most artists say that the merch is what helps them afford gas and food and things while they're on the road. I mean, they've already invested in buying all that stuff. They're just trying to get a little bit of their money back. And to hear that a venue is taking a cut, that's not right. And at least in my opinion, I really.
I was told that the 930 Club in DC takes 40%
Oh no.
of, yeah, the industry average I hear is like 25%, which even that is just, and what these venues say is unless they have to, they're providing someone to sell your merch. So that's why they ask for the cut. And the bands are like, well, if we provide our own person, well, no, that's just house
Exactly.
policy. Right. That's just house policy. Like that's how it is. Well, like, yeah, you're right
Yeah.
though. It's highway robbery. And just like for example, like the Pearl Jam tour, those tickets are over $200 to see Pearl Jam. Like that would be my 16th time seeing Pearl Jam. I'm not spending $200 to see them. Like I just
Mhm.
like there's a threshold, and I think like that's there. That's it.
Well, and I also wonder how much of that actually goes back
Right.
to the artists.
Right.
Um, you know, if you could see the breakdown of who's getting what, it's like what piece of the pie, um, where does it go? It'd be interesting to see all that because I doubt they're getting that much of it themselves anyway, unless they have a guarantee. And not many artists these days actually are able to do that. I mean, unless you're big time and you've got a big label or someone behind you or a promoter, helping you with that. The little guys and artists don't have any of that pull or leeway to do that. So, um,
And Spotify keeps reining back, how they pay out these artists. Now this whole, ruling about anything under 1,000 plays, you don't even get anything. Well, like, if you're an indie band, if you're getting 600 plays like on your new song, that's a huge deal, And now you're not even getting anything for that. Like it's just,
no,
man.
that's a crime in my opinion. I just very anti Spotify. I have a Spotify account, but I use Bandcamp to buy the music that I play on my radio show and just can't bring myself to use Spotify. It's there if I have it, if I need it, maybe like when I'm in my car or sometime that I don't have access to physical stuff. But no. And that's not a place for me to discover music anyway. It's a place if I'm like in a record store and I want to hear something and they don't have a way for me to listen, I'll pull something up and try to find it in there. But I have made the connections I've made with record labels and with artists all through pretty much through Bandcamp. And it's been by saying, I'm buying your music to play it on my radio show. And I think they appreciate that I'm actually trying to help them and buy it. And it's not saying that, everybody has to do that, but it's just to me, the way that I feel myself, I feel better about doing it that way. Plus, I want to own the music. I'm still in that mindset. I want to physically have something that I have purchased or have, not just a stream. That's the thing about Apple Music. I won't join Apple Music either because I want that, to be downloaded and to be on, my device, not just borrowing it for a brief period of time. I don't like that. I was like, no, I want it. I want to have it. Unfortunately, there are people that have grown up only knowing Spotify now. We have, you know, people that have never known any other source of music. So it's hard to imagine being, like a teenager and thinking, hey, I should go buy this or support the artist. But, I feel better about feeling like I'm helping them a little bit by actually purchasing something, and I still get music sent to me all the time. But if it's something I really enjoy, I will make a point, to purchase it and to have it. It's just something that's probably why I have so much music, but it is sad to see Spotify do that. To me, that's criminal to not pay. And that's another thing that they're being allowed to do it.
Yeah. And they're losing money. Like that's the hilarious part in all of this. I don't think they've had one quarter where they actually have made money as a company. So I don't know what they're doing with this 10.99 a month that they charge. But so
Exactly.
you did bring up a good point. Talk about college radio, because our audience that is under the age of 30 probably has no idea what you're talking about, and like what college radio meant to like us in the 90s and early 2000s.
Hmm. Well, I mean, when you think about college radio and you think about non-commercial radio, which is mainly the thing that I'm talking about, it is radio that is programmed by the person that is doing, playing the music, that is hosting the show. It is having that control, which you don't have if you were on a corporately controlled station. And once you get a taste of that freedom and that, ability to play what you like, it's really hard for me to imagine going somewhere where somebody would tell me what I had to play or give me the parameters of like, you can play this to this and you have to play this X amount of times, a day or whenever. And college radio is where you start to hear underground music, things that are not the mainstream top 40, commercial things. And once you see corporately across the country what stations are controlled, you start to see the similarities. And it is such a cookie cutter format that it's not unique, it's not eclectic, it's not anything besides the same thing. Very repetitive. And, that's what a lot of people think about radio. There's different levels of radio, obviously, between just regular stations and then satellite radio and things you pay for with a subscription. Obviously, you get hundreds of channels. It's like having cable TV versus non-cable, which who doesn't have? I mean, there's ways now to get all these apps and things to get your television, but when we were growing up, it was like you either had the, handful of public channels or you had cable and you had, a big variety, but you had to pay for all of that. And college radio is just one of the coolest things because it is independent. Usually it is manned by students. And, think about the tastes of college students. I mean, that's definitely catering to a different age group, mindset, that whole thing. And college radio is one of the coolest things because it's typically free form. And, that's one of the coolest things to me is that freedom you have when you have a free form station. There is like nothing saying you have to play this and you have to play this and this is all you're allowed to do, which if you look around the country, that's a rare thing these days to hear freeform stations. And the low power stations, not all of them have been able to survive. We're currently in the middle of our membership and pledge drive. Right now, we do this twice a year, and we rely on donations and on, the underwriters to help support the station I'm on. And that is partly because we're such a low power station. We're a nonprofit. We don't have big, deep pockets, of backers or no commercials, to fund us, no advertising dollars. It's a partnership in the community with a lot of other local community groups that really help keep us afloat and with the listeners.
Yeah.
But I think the benefits outweigh any of the things that we have to do, to survive, to stay afloat. I think that may be the case now for a lot of artists. I've noticed too, is that a lot of people are shying away from signing to a label. It's a lot of work. You have to do a lot yourself and rely on your own, finances to support what you're doing. But that gives you the freedom to do what you want to do. So it's
the give and take.
Yeah, it is. It's a big give and take. But
Yeah.
like I said, I don't think I could do it the other way. I don't know. Maybe I could, but I can't envision how I would conform. I think I would have a hard time.
I mean, you're right. The homogenization of radio. I mean, iHeartRadio is just, it is.
Right.
You hear the same 50 songs. They're everywhere. And unfortunately, that has kind of seeped into the music festival scene as well. Like
Oh, it totally has.
like I'm tired of seeing Noah Kahan, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and the Chainsmokers as like the headliners of every music festival. Yeah, yeah. I don't know how that changes because again, like when you have just these major players and corporations involved, they're not going to cede that power quickly. So I don't know how this changes. You know what I mean? Any thoughts on that, or any thoughts on how that will improve, or the situation will improve?
I don't really know how it would improve, but I definitely see the influence of Live Nation and big groups like that over the lineups, because that's why you see the artists, that are on their rosters are the artists on their festivals. And it is very saturated now where, like you said, you start to see the same lineup, maybe a different festival, but it looks very similar to that other festival. And, I grew up going to Bonnaroo when it was eclectic and not such a copy of all the other festivals going on. And at that point in time, I mean, that was 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, you could count on discovering things you'd never heard before and seeing bands you'd never heard before. And now it's a rare thing. I saw that you did the episodes about the bottom line artists. Yeah, those are the ones I go to first to see what is it I've not seen before. And I start from the bottom up because typically 9 times out of 10, I've seen all the headliners at some other festival. But nowadays, if I do go to a festival, it's going to be a smaller, maybe not huge, corporate run type festival. And even the ones that started off small have now grown and changed from what they were when it was just magical, when you're like, oh, there's under 5,000 people here. This is mind blowing. But hey, still better than I think a lot of the options that are out there. And like you said, how many times do you want to pay that amount of money to see the same person?
Right. Have you ever been to Newport Folk Festival?
No, it's on my bucket list. I have wanted to go. It's such a hard ticket to get.
It is.
And I've had so many friends that have played or are playing. In fact, one of my friends said yesterday that they got accepted to play. And it's a new little project that I just think, how cool is that? I mean, they're all three talented, but they just released music. And the super cool part about that is the person kind of behind all that has been on my show a couple times, and he's got a studio in his home, and he had all this music he kept bringing in for me to play or sending me. And I said, "Are you ever going to release this stuff? This is amazing." Finally, now I think they're starting to put some of these um, in album form and put it out. And that album just came out last month, and now they're going to play at Newport. So that makes me so happy. And that is Aaron Ray, Twain, and Paul DeFiglia. And Paul toured with the Avett Brothers for a while. He's an incredibly talented bass player, and is about to release being on a jazz album. He's worked with so many great people, but it's super cool to see that they're going to play at Newport Folk Fest. So,
Yeah, so this is a good segue because I want you to tell me about your Iron and Wine, the film experience that you got to be a part of.
oh wow, yeah, that was actually a great surprise. I was asked by the Belcourt Theater here in town to talk to him after the film. So that was something really lucky on my part to do. And it is the documentary, and now I'm trying to make sure I know the name of it. We Can See Forever. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that's what it was called.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
And it was released, I
Who Can
believe,
See Forever?
You Can
Yeah,
See Forever.
yep,
Okay.
yeah.
And that was super cool. I watched it the night before and then got to talk to Sam afterwards and tried to ask some really serious questions. Probably should have just stuck with a few simple things, but it was a lot of fun with his responses and the audience, and everybody seemed to really enjoy it. It was it was hard to decide what to ask because that documentary is pretty serious, and thinking about some of the things that maybe weren't answered that might have, been something. That's how I saw it, is like, oh, I want to know a little bit more maybe of what inspired him to get into music and the style of writing that he has, those kind of things. But
I
it's always,
wonder if I wonder if he's a music first or lyrics first kind of artist.
I think he's a lyrics first
Okay.
from the sounds of it. He said he writes in a journal and writes things down and then maybe comes back to it later on. So I believe when there's enough, maybe in a song starts to come together, the lyrics are there. I think that's when they start working. And depending on who he's working with, he's had several different people in his band. So, and this new album that just was released the other day has a whole new band in it or behind him. Yeah. So
So
it's really
good.
cool.
Yeah.
I like
Um, I saw him. So my Newport Folk experience, I actually got to see Sam with Ben Bridwell when they did their project, A Band
Yeah,
of Horses, and that was fantastic. I was very fortunate to see that because I think that's the only time that they've ever done that.
probably, yeah, one-off show. I know he does talk about his favorite collabs and how much he enjoys playing with other people in that documentary, which is something that you can see. I got to see him with Andrew Bird, I guess the last time I saw him play live, and I could watch them together all the time. I mean, it was just the two of them though when they did their tour, and it was pretty awesome.
So, I mean, you have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of bands. Is there one interview like on air that sticks out in your mind that was like either memorable or funny or like something about it that made that one extra special?
Jamie Branch. I don't know if you were familiar with Jamie, but she was one of the people that I reached out to on my own. She was playing the Blue Room right ahead of the Big Ears Festival. And this was 2 or 3 years ago. I'm trying to think what year it was. Maybe I think she's just been gone a little over a year. So maybe 2 years ago. And I've always, admired female trumpet players, probably because it's what I played when I was younger and had, watched her from afar, never got to see her play live. But to have her come in to the studio and talk about, you know, some of her inspirations, talk about the music and some of the things that she said to me, and then get to see her play at Big Ears Festival. She played with Alabaster de Plume. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but eccentric and interesting and just so cool. And, she passed away that same year. So this was something that will be, something I always remember. And way too young, very tragic and sad. And just one of the things that I'm very happy that I got to do and got to talk to her. And she told me, she said, you don't ever give it up. You just sit it down for a little while. So maybe I will pick it back up one day. That's one of the coolest things. Recently, I got to interview Jody Stevens, a big star, which was pretty cool. Jody and Luther Russell have a new group, kind of new-ish. I say new. They've been playing together for 10 years, but I think, within the last, what, I'm trying to do math. I think 2017 was when their first album came out, maybe. I'm horrible with dates. But, it seems new-ish to me. Anyway, that was pretty cool. And that was just in the last few weeks. They came through and played a show to meet somebody, a legend like Jody Stevens, which is just incredible. And that was, thanks to someone sending them or giving them my info, which really made my day.
Mhm. So, has there been any experience with anyone in the music industry where, and you don't have to name a name, but like where you were disappointed either because of like the conversation or just because of like how it transpired?
I did a lot of interviews, back in 2020 by phone. And some people, let's just say, are more serious than others. Yeah, there were a few situations. I did get ghosted by somebody for the first time last year, and that was very disappointing. After them reaching out to me and saying how much they'd love to do an interview and told me to, get in touch with them the day of and all these things. And then 2 hours beforehand, maybe they forgot about it. That's quite possible. You never know, but that's kind of tainted my view of their music. Unfortunately, they're not on the top of my list anymore. Let's just say, you know what I mean?
So I know my top three bands of all time. Do you have a top three?
I am horrible with trying to choose because I like so much stuff. I really, really have a hard time. I'd say if I had to say one of my top three would be the Cocteau Twins. That is probably one of my all-time favorite groups. That's an easy one just because Elizabeth Fraser's voice is it's incomparable to anyone else. And it's so cool to see all the younger generation still appreciate their music. And like I said, I grew up listening, when I was probably a teenager, discovering alternative music. So The Cure is another one of those bands that is up there for me as one of my all-time faves. But I don't like to rate. I really have a hard time with like best of lists because I feel like everything I play is stuff that I like. So trying to narrow it down to just a handful, I always feel very conflicted about that. And I feel very loyal to the people that I play and try to, maybe promote their music. So it's hard for me to not include everyone on those lists. It's like I couldn't narrow it down to 10. There's no way. So it's really hard to narrow it down to even three.
I try to take that attitude when I do my album reviews. I tend to not do an album review that I don't enjoy the album. Not that that's, like 100% true, but I would say 95% of the time, like I'm going to have to enjoy the album to really like dive into it and really enjoy doing the review. So, to your point, like I get that, where
Yeah.
you want to kind of be authentic and genuine. But also too, like, you know, I hate award shows as much as because music is subjective and like, my
That's
best friend,
me.
yeah, my best friend who likes pop music, I can't say that his music is bad or his taste is bad because that's what he likes, like who am I to say that what I like is the best, it's so
Yeah.
it is kind of funny that we think that our award shows are so important and
Well, I've had a lot of respect for people, especially people like radio hosts and DJs, in some of the things that they have said and talked about music and promoted music from the smallest artist to the largest artist. I have heard some like Michael DeBar. He's got a program on Little Steven's Underground Garage that I have heard here and there. But I mean, he was, he's still making music as well. And he's one of those people that said all art is, something to be appreciated and enjoyed. And you could like somebody, that no one's ever heard of. And it is as good as somebody that, is selling millions of copies of records. And that's kind of how I feel about it. Like you said, it's subjective. I really appreciate like John Peel. He always said, and at least I'm paraphrasing this, there's no bad music, only bad listeners. Things like that. And I just really respect, I love hearing people that appreciate all kinds of things and finding value in art. It's it's all what you relate to, and sometimes it may be a mood, who knows, but it's very hard for me to listen to award shows and the way that they um, place value on popularity, maybe over artistry, or the the qualifications maybe for those awards, which, like you said, it's just I don't think it equates. There's so many talented people that don't make it. Who's to say that those are the best, the people that have made it? I mean, that's one of the things I appreciate about like Light in the Attic and some of these labels that go dig for people that maybe did one album that could have been huge. I think a lot of it's timing, you know, um, who's to say that, why is it that somebody's popular after they're gone and, that they got their break many years later, but it's really strange to see how timing affects a lot of that. And I just appreciate stuff that I enjoy. I don't think it has to be something that everybody, thinks is the best. Like you said, it's all subjective. So,
I I think it's funny too how a song from like the 80s can get like running up the hill, how that had a resurgence, 40 years later, you know, just from a TV show, it's just
right.
that's the power of music and like that's it puts things in perspective when something happens like that because it does. It's just it really is reflects the power of music.
And a lot of it is does, something about it maybe register with you at that time. It may not have when that's the whole thing about timing. I've had other people tell me it will find you when the timing is right. And I'm like, okay, cool. So even though they may have heard that, I've got a friend that I'm like, hey, I told you about that song. Don't you remember? And they're like, it did not even dawn on me until I heard it a few months later. And then something about it finally, I guess, there was something that aligned where then it kind of grabbed them and they were like, okay, now I get it. It has to be something that you feel, not somebody else feels. I don't know. I think it's a personal thing.
Well, and also too, like the thing about music, like I can revisit an album 10 or 15 years after it came out and have a totally different like listening experience, like perspective on it. Like that's kind of cool. Like you can't do that with like watching I guess you could with watching a movie or a TV show, but it just doesn't have the same impact. You know what I mean?
I know. And I think it's interesting how you can listen and hear something different every time you listen. Um, yeah, it's all perspective.
Well, Leanne, I appreciate you taking your time on
Thank you.
this wonderful Friday and our
Yeah.
100th episode to spend the evening with us and share your perspective and your joy of music that it's infectious. So I
Oh, you're
appreciate that.
welcome. Yeah, it is just something that I don't think I'll ever get tired of. I don't know about you, but um, my friends are probably like, do you do anything besides music? And I'm like, I eat, sleep, and dream music. I don't know. It's just one of those things that keeps me going. And I think when you realize that it is, I mean, you probably know people like that are that inspired and motivated and driven. There's not a lot that gets me excited these days more than music.
Yeah.
Um, every once in a while, it might be a movie, but for the most part, I can find music for every mood and every situation. So it's a never ending rabbit hole.
Well, and I'll tell you what, for as bad and as horrible the pandemic was, I kind of predicted this. Like I knew that once like everything settled down, the wave of great music that's come out in the past year, like year and a half. I mean, it's been incredible. Like some of the bands that I like have just put out like some of their best work. Like it's really incredible. Have you kind of felt that as well?
Yeah, I felt that a lot. And also some people had so much time that they not only have one album, they've got enough for 4 or 5 albums. So it's going to continue to keep coming. Not everybody had that type of inspiration. And some people just said, no, I couldn't do it. I can't perform with that much anxiety. I could not write. I couldn't do, the things that I wanted to do. And then other people, it was this gift of time, of them having the time that they really needed to spend to work on, some of the things that they didn't get to do all the time when they were too busy and they were touring. So, yeah, I think I have seen some incredible stuff, and I think it's just going to keep coming. Now that people have had that time, I think people value it more and appreciate it. Obviously, people appreciate like going to live music and things like that more, but I think having the ability to spend time on yourself and working on things, I think people appreciate that a lot. I have seen a change in a lot of the ways that people create what they want to do and the way that they do it.
I will say, I at one point during the pandemic, I did have a innate fear that we were not going to be able to experience live music again. Like I
Mhm.
did, I really did have that fear, and like it did start to drive me a little nuts that I could not see a show after that long. Like
Oh yeah.
it felt like years, but yeah.
We were streaming shows and trying to make it feel like a concert with the speakers going and all that, like the apps and the sites that you could play concerts from and pretending that we were having a concert on a Friday or a Saturday here at home. That was our entertainment. It's like, all right,
Yeah.
we're going to pretend we're having a big show. Not quite the same without other people there, but we were trying to anyway.
Yeah. The when Ben Gibbard was doing his in-home like sessions during the pandemic, that was a real treat, and like a real like, man, like I needed that. Because he was doing crazy covers, he was doing like albums, like just acoustic, like I don't know if you saw any of them, but it was a real treat. But yeah. Hmm. Seems like yesterday.
For real. Time is
Well,
definitely strange.
yeah, yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for doing this, Leanne Merritt from WXNA in Nashville, Tennessee. 1015, huh?
Yes.
1015.
And streaming at wxnafm.org.
Excellent. And you are the host of Exposure on Wednesdays at 2 p.m.
Correct. Yeah, Central Time. Thank you. Nice.
Absolutely. So, again, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to our YouTube channel, our social media pages. That helps us. That helps the bands and artists that we feature. Check out our sponsor, RAR Outfitters, RAWR Outfitters.com. Don't just wear RAR. And as always, I've been Dogg. You've been great. This is the Music Lab Podcast.